The governor here, while he's compiling all this data and coming up with all these projections and these cost savings, okay, did he sit down with you and your staff and show you the spreadsheets and everything that he compiled?
Yes.
Do you have a copy of those spreadsheets there?
We can get them for you.
All right. And the governor's projection was he's using 3% for the interest on refinancing, right?
Yes.
But in fact, right now, the rate is 3.5%, and it's going up. Isn't that true?
Yes.
So his projections are wrong right off the bat. If he's saying 3 and it's 3.5 right now, his projections are wrong. Will you agree with that?
No, because you're making assumptions. It hasn't gone out yet. It goes up, it goes down.
But if it's going up, but right now you agree it's at 3.5%. So in my opinion, he's wrong right off the bat. Let me ask you something else. Is there a concern under this bill?
You should also remember that there isn't a specific date by which they have to refinance.
Okay.
So that allows them to take advantage of what they believe the market might do.
Now, there's a concern under this that if we restructure the debt, there is a concern that we can lose our tax-exempt status. Has anyone talked about that?
You mean you're talking about IRS approval? Yes.
Yeah. And is it a possibility that we can lose our tax-exempt status?
Well, if the IRS doesn't sign off on this whole thing, yes, except that's a deal killer. That kills this legislation.
Okay. And there's also going to be restructuring costs, correct?
Restructuring for?
Restructuring the debt. There's a fee for that. There's costs to restructuring the debt.
Yeah, that's all factored in.
Do you know how much that will cost us, or the transaction fees?
Not offhand, no.
Are we talking millions?
Yeah, that's possible, considering the amount of money involved. The same as if, your local village goes out to bond some project. They pay a fee to somebody to help them do that. This is the same thing, but it's all factored into the savings. When I talked about a savings of several $100 million, that's after all of the costs.
Okay. Now, let me just ask you a couple things. The IBEW, are they on board with this proposal?
I don't know if they are now, but I know that their most significant issue has now been addressed.
Okay.
Through a separate, not through this bill, but through a separate agreement that the governor negotiated.
Okay. And presently, the ratepayers LIPA bill, right? What exactly on that bill goes to LIPA? What fees? There's fees broken down on those bills?
You mean for what? For administration or?
Well, what I'm trying to figure out, some of it goes to the service provider, right?
Yes.
And there's also like the 18A or whatever else goes to LIPA.
There's fuel costs, there's state and local taxes and assessments, there's interest, there's administration, there's the renewables and efficiency program, there's operations and maintenance.
Okay. And now, what additional fees on the tax bills will be going to LIPA on the new bills under this plan?
I'm not sure.
Are they going to be collecting the same fees, LIPA, or are there additional fees that they're going to have to pay? Are they going to pay an additional fee for the new Department of Public Service?
No, because that's paid, as I indicated before, that's paid through the 18A assessment,
Okay.
which is already being paid.
All right, so they're getting what they get right now. That's what's coming into LIPA, right?
Could you repeat that?
The fees that they're getting, we're not going to hit them with any additional fees. The fees that they're collecting now, right? What's going to happen is PSE&G will get the service provider fees that National Grid gets, right? And then what's going to happen is LIPA...
They'll get whatever's negotiated in the contract, which is not part of this bill.
Okay, and LIPA will get the normal fees that they normally get, the administrative fees, the 18A, and all that you just mentioned.
Well, they're not fees. It's built into the rate structure. So, yes, the rate structure will remain the same, except, as I indicated, the $26 million in taxes that the state collects from them now will no longer be there. The refinancing will save money. So there are savings that will no longer be part of the rates, if that's your question.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out where, I mean, we have LIPA, they had a $7 billion debt. We still have a $7 billion debt. They haven't been able to pay off this debt, okay? They're not they just kept refinancing and refinancing. And I'm looking at this bill thinking we're just going to keep refinancing and refinancing. And I don't see any new revenues come in to pay off that debt. I don't see any new revenues for them to go off of. So I'm wondering, where are we here? I mean, I see more bureaucracies. I see 2 brand new bureaucracies. I see dozens of people hired. I don't know how many people LIPA is going to get rid of. I don't know how many people LIPA is going to keep. You can't tell me that. The governor can't tell me that. I have projections. I don't know where he got these projections from. All right? And, you know, where I come from, we call them pulling numbers out of our hat, to be politically correct. I was thinking something else. The other thing is, I'm looking at, and we talked about LIPA before, where I said that they could put rate increases in, and the rate increases would go in place, and then they would hold the hearings. And I think the staff said, no, that's not what happens with this legislation, correct?
There is no permanent increase that can take effect without the hearings and that whole process that I described.
Not a permanent, but an increase can take effect, right? Let me go here. Page 9 of the bill, all right? And if you go to line 18, let's just start right here. The authority of the service provider shall, on or before February 1st, 2015, submit a review of the Department of Public Service, a 3-year rate proposal for the rates and charge to take effect and after January 1st. The authority and the service provider shall thereafter submit a review to the Department of Public Service any rate proposal that would increase the rates and charge and thus increase in aggregate revenues of the authority by more than 2.5% to be measured on an annual basis, provided, however, that the authority may place such rates and charges into effect on an interim basis subject to prospective rate adjustments. So basically, they can decide that they're going over 2.5%. All they have to do is submit a report. Those rates will go into effect while this new authority, and they say it's the authority here, does 2 hearings, one in Suffolk and one in Nassau. And they can decide to put the rates in effect. That's what this bill says here, correct?
It's not when you say authority, you mean LIPA, I assume? The authority,
no,
LIPA
it says
does the
the
hearings.
service provider.
No, LIPA does the hearings. Yes, there can be interim rates while LIPA does the hearings and goes through the rest of the process that's required. They're going to be going through a much longer process than they have in the past to allow for adequate review by everybody and public participation and review by the DPS. It's going to go from like a process of, you know, maybe 2 months to a process that's more like 9 months.
Okay. Now, Bob, we heard on the floor today that there were a lot of negotiations, okay, between this House and the governor's office, and that everyone was included in these negotiations. That's what we heard, right?
No, I don't think we said that.
All right. But in fact, this side of the aisle was not invited to these negotiations. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I don't know whether that's the case.
Okay. And the bottom line, there are more representatives for Long Island on this side of the aisle than on that side of the aisle. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
So the lion's share of the Long Island representatives were left out of these negotiations. Is that a fair statement?
No, I don't think that is a fair statement since the Senate was represented there.
Okay, but we're talking about this body. This body, the lion's share of the representatives...
Long Island being represented. They were represented.
Well, but a lot of the people of Long Island, the people that we represent the people that we represent on this side of the aisle, they were not represented in these meetings.
Mr. Graf, I believe that you had your delegation had a meeting with the governor and/or his representatives on this subject, and I assume that you had an opportunity for input, and you certainly had the opportunity to ask for additional input at any point in this process, and I'm sure they would have been happy to provide it.
Well, Bob, how long ago was the first time that you saw this legislation?
Pardon me?
When did you first see this legislation?
Whenever the governor first presented it, which is quite a while ago.
Well, first time I saw it, and a lot of other people in this chamber saw it, was when we pulled it off the newspaper's website. We never had a copy. And this we saw 3 days ago. That was placed on our desk. So, in my opinion, this was a very disingenuous exercise. However,
well, let me address that. 98% of that document is what the governor originally proposed, and it's been out there for a considerable length of time. Couldn't have come as too much of a surprise.
Well, I would disagree with that, but I think concepts were put out there, but no actual document. On the bill, please.
On the bill, Mr. Graf.
As I said before, I've heard that to do nothing, we have to move forward, but I'm not willing to move forward over a cliff. All right? What we have here is we have LIPR on steroids. All right? We have an overbloated new bureaucracy that's not going to save us any money. We have dozens of new employees that are going to magically appear, and we're not going to have to pay them any more money for these employees that never existed before this. We're expected to believe that this is going to save the people of Long Island money. What I can tell you is that the number one problem that we have on Long Island is the cost of electricity. It affects our property taxes. It affects our school taxes. It affects everything. Right now, for instance, my school district, and I've said this before, one school district pays $240,000 a month for electricity. One of my towns, the town of Islip, pays $330,000 a month. The town, excuse me, can I have some quiet, please? The town of Brookhaven pays $450,000 a month, and Suffolk County pays $1,779,000. And I can tell you, with this legislation, it's going to go up. The one thing that we've been basically shipping out of Long Island are our children, our neighbors, our friends, and our family. And if this nonsense comes through and we pass this, there's more people that are going to be moving south. There are more businesses that are going to be moving south. This is nonsense. It's going to cost us more money. And for people to stand up here and to represent Long Island and say that this is going to save us or save our rates is beyond belief. This is nothing more than a political document, and it does nothing more than to increase the cost and make it harder for people to live on Long Island. I can tell you now, I'm not willing to go over the cliff with this governor. This should have been, we should have sat down and been able to discuss this. I'm tired of this governor trying to ram things down our throats. Enough is enough. Someone needs to stand up to this bully and tell him that if you don't want to talk to us, don't expect me to support you. I'll be voting no on this piece of garbage.